So for those of you who may have been paying attention to Twitter over the last 24 hours, Vivian Musk has been humiliating himself viciously. Not by posting on X, but by posting on the failed libtard social media platform of Threads. But the irony of it is that he obviously doesn't want to post on the platform his dad owns because he doesn't want to face the consequences and accountability, as well as input that would come flooding in to correct his ideologically induced psychopathology. What immediately struck me, though, about this video that he put up on Threads is that his mental ability is worse than that I remember him having in 9th grade when I spoke to him. For those of you who don't know, I went to the same school as Vivian Musk, formerly known as Xavier, and I can tell you all about that school. I already made a video about that. You can go check it out on my channel. It's being censored by YouTube. It was a very far left-leaning high school. Xavier came right out of Ad Astra, the school that Elon Musk had for his kids. That was at the SpaceX campus. It's now shut down, so I can say that. But he sent his boys to different high schools, and he sent one of his sons, Xavier, to Crossroads, the school that I went to, school for the arts and sciences, but it was extremely far left. I had one conversation with Xavier for a few minutes in the library once because I had met his dad a couple times, and I was then, as I am now, a massive fan of Elon, and so I asked Xavier about Elon Musk. I said, what is it like basically having him as your dad? And in this video, I think I'm going to share with you a story that no one else knows about and what I think happened in a way that maybe not even Elon himself has considered. But first I want to show you this video because it's so weird to see this kid who I spoke to. Guys, he was so full of life. He was animated, he was excited, he's very clearly he was a theater kid. He was more theater kid than the biggest theater kids we had at that school. He was filled with excitement for the world, enthusiastic about everything, found everything interesting, and you could tell this just from the way he spoke. To me, that was unsurprising, given that I knew about his background, the fact that he came from Ad Astra, literally the #1 education experience that maybe any person has ever experienced in the history of the planet. But what you see here is so slow and dead and intellectually stagnated that it added a layer of sadness and tragedy to what's happened.
On here and say that I'm doing well. I'm doing fine, actually. And I
can hear the liberal programming in his voice. This was new. This didn't happen. This wasn't how he was in 9th grade.
Fine, actually. And
I can still hear that kid. But there's a layer of woke mind virus programming on top of it. The kind of white woman liberal tone of I must be a good person and I must be a victim in order to be a good person, that sort of thing.
I'm formulating a response and whatnot. It's being worked on. Just hold your goddamn horses for 5 more seconds, okay? I promise it's getting worse.
So in this video, he's deeply slow and lethargic compared to his 9th grade version of himself, just cognitively, intellectually speaking. He was more together when he was 14. By the way, most of the kids at Ad Astra were geniuses that would probably be surpassing even your average adult, just in terms of cognitive ability. Maybe not in terms of emotional intelligence, but in terms of just raw cognitive ability, most of them were insanely high IQ people. And Xavier was no exception. But Crossroads and the ideological programming at Crossroads clearly brought him down. What you can tell from this video, too, is that he references people pressuring him to come out with a response, which, of course, you would expect, given that Elon Musk said with Jordan Peterson, my son is dead, the woke mind virus killed him. And so leftists find this to be infuriating, primarily because it shows them we're not afraid to stand against their ideology. That's really what angers them, because as they've rejected rationality and all coherent objective frameworks as oppression and masculine patriarchal oppression, they're left with no way to argue ideas. And so the only thing they have is insisting you have to be a part of our ideology or you're a bad person. And so when somebody's willing to come out and say on the biggest stage possible with Jordan Peterson, right, the woke mind virus is an existential threat to humanity and they stole my son, that labels them as evil in a way no one can deny. And it says I'm willing to go against them. And I recorded an analysis of that video, and by the end of it, 3 million people were watching live. That's live. after the video's gone up, hundreds of millions of people have seen that interview, hundreds of millions of views. So yes, it's very infuriating to the left, and so that's the reason why in this video he says, I'm formulating a response, because he thinks he's just talking to, because he's put this on Threads, right? He thinks he's just talking to the people who are liberals who are saying, oh, you gotta clap back at him, oh my gosh, yeah, get that evil billionaire dad of yours, he's so bad, and you're so good because you're a victim. Eventually that response did come through, and where is it? There's one of them, but I want to find the full thing. So this is all on Threads. I'm not going to read through it because it's actually just too sad to see that kid that I spoke to, like being reduced to this. Mentally, this writing is so far beneath him, or beneath who he should be. And I'm not really talking about politics, although that's sad. I'm talking about the mental ability that it displays. But here are the messages. You can pause the video and read it. This last one I'll read to you because I found it very interesting. So there's actually two I want to show you guys. The first one is this one. Ask her if I'm not a woman. Sure, Jan, whatever you say. I'm legally recognized as a woman in the state of California and don't concern myself with the opinions of those who are below me. So here you see the open narcissism where he blatantly says, those who are below me. Any person who disagrees with the radical left is below me. But what's weird about this is that his fall from grace is basically like the ultimate failure story, because he had the greatest education known to man at Ad Astra and then let Crossroads destroy him. And Crossroads does not necessarily destroy people, as I'm about to show you of the next post I show you guys from him. But also, he's not inheriting any of his father's wealth, which presumably would be what you'd assume the child of a billionaire to say when he says, I'm not concerned with those who are below me. You're not going to inherit a single dime from Elon Musk because of how much you failed, because of what you've allowed to happen to your mind. So just from this first sentence, you see immense leftist psychopathology and narcissism on display. And when it takes place in young people, that's when it's in its purest form. It's most transparent. It's out in the open. That's when you can really see what their ideology is made of. And it's an ugly sight. Obviously, Elon can't say the same because in a ketamine-fueled haze, he's desperate for attention and validation. Right. Elon is desperate for attention with 190 million followers while he reaches more than a continent of people a day. Yeah, he's desperate for attention. If you could pick a single person, literally any human in the world that would need less attention, it would be Elon Musk, who reaches hundreds of millions of people a day and literally owns the biggest social media platform in the world. And when I say biggest, that's not an opinion. It's the #1 app for social media on the App Store. So you see the inversion of reality, because objective reality is oppressive and offensive and discriminatory according to the left. So, okay, so that first part, okay, so the first part of that second sentence, you see the inversion of reality, saying Elon is desperate for attention. What is he desperate? Who is he desperate for attention for? Apparently a validation from an army of degenerate red-pilled incels and pick-me's who are quick to give it to him. So every single person that criticizes Vivian is red-pilled, and I was very interested to see that term red-pilled incels, and because that's sort of niche. Like even the term red pill is very niche, you know what I mean? Which means Vivian is aware that the red pill exists and is so enraged by it that he would call people like Andrew Tate or Fresh and Fit, who literally have women flocking to them, red-pilled incels. You could literally be having sex with a woman in front of these people and they'd call you an incel. But again, to the left, reality is not only not a priority, it's offensive, discriminatory, and oppressive. So that's why they say the opposite of it. But apparently all 190 million of Elon Musk's followers are red-pilled incels. And the reason Elon needs validation is because he's on ketamine. Bro, see, he thinks that this is just about insults, that this is not about ideas. That's the reason he's posting on Threads instead of X, which is the battleground and arena for debating ideas. It's classic leftist anti-intellectualism manifested in a juvenile spirit. To think that something as heart-wrenching and almost sacred as a father saying, my son's been killed, while talking to Jordan Peterson, on the highest abstract level of ideas, that the response would be to throw desperate ad hominems at his father. I mean, it's sad, but nothing really encapsulates the left more than this. Going to an all-leftist echo chamber to try to garner counterfeit virtue as a result of claiming to be a victim, saying the opposite of reality repeatedly, manifesting pure narcissism, saying that any person who disagrees with you is below you, while being virtuous and meritless, insulting your father rather than making arguments, and then insulting and demonizing any person who would disagree with you and hold you accountable, which of course you have been on X to the tune of anywhere between 20 times and 100 times more people than have seen your Threads posts. Because X, as a result of your dad's actions, is 100 times bigger and the number one social media app on the planet. This is what always happens to leftists. Their narcissism gets them humiliated because the left-wing ideology fundamentally denies reality. It denies reality because reality is offensive. It holds them accountable. It references an individual identity rather than the group identity membership that Marxism demands of these people in order for them to reject reality and say, I'm a good person, just as a result of being a victim and engaging in all of the behavior I just lined out that is reprehensible. But what's interesting to me is that this type of behavior, this type of destroyed psyche, was not even inevitable from the environment that he came from, because I came from that same environment. I went to that school, and I'm on the polar opposite side of the continuum of intellectualism, having my psyche in order, being an individual, aiming upward, caring about truth, etc. I mean, caring about truth is to put it lightly, of course, but it's so interesting to see somebody throw away literally the entire world to have your last name be Musk, then to change your name from being Musk, disown your father, castrate yourself. You couldn't write more of a tragic story, to be honest. If Shakespeare was alive, this would be the new tragic story. If you look at this tweet, Vivian or Xavier knows who Jordan Peterson is, the same man who is responsible for me, I'll say not turning out like him because I never would have done what he did, but I was a liberal sheep up until like 10th grade. I was an atheist. I only believed in science. I only believed in the material world. I was somewhat nihilistic, although I always knew that there was meaning to life. I just didn't want to accept why. But it was in 10th grade when I discovered Jordan Peterson's video. It was the Kathy Newman video in 2016. My friend actually showed it to me in English class, and he said, you got to see this. I watched it, and then my life was never the same after that, because I realized at that point that, I was being lied to. Things weren't quite making sense just because the environment was so far left-leaning. And I can tell you guys that in my grade, a lot of the guys had similar experiences. Crossroads was actually so far left-leaning. We had school-wide assemblies on microaggressions. We were allowed to take days off in order to go to protests in downtown LA. We were allowed to take days off to go to feminist marches. The books we were reading in history as well as the humanities were essentially broken, resentful renditions of history and literature that were just focused on power disparity, which of course is a Marxist paradigm. I have endless stories about the stuff that I heard and saw at Crossroads, but what you were always aware of was that, and this wasn't true in the science classes, to be fair to Crossroads, but this was true in the humanities and this was true in history, was that the quality of an idea was determined by the identity of the speaker, not by the quality and merit of the idea. So if a black girl were to say something, it automatically meant more than if I were to say something, even if what I had to say was 5 times more intelligent. So the Marxist dichotomy was stark for everyone to see, basically, is what I'm saying. And while I discovered Jordan Peterson in 10th grade, this poor human basically went down the polar opposite road of total destruction and disintegration while being told that they're a good person and a hero for doing all of the opposite things of reality. This is the reason why the left is resentful. They trade on resentment. It's the fuel in the engine of their ideology. It's the reason why they degenerate so vigorously. Those who reject resentment and therefore Marxism have their lives improved because they necessarily become an individual and aim for something ideal. Whereas those who embrace resentment are fundamentally at war with coherence itself and therefore nature and therefore reality. And it was interesting for me to see Vivian demonize Jordan Peterson, the same man that saved me from becoming like him. Now, I told you guys I would share the story of what I think really happened that I don't even think Elon knows about. And I could be wrong. I might be wrong, but I don't think I am. So at Crossroads, a lot of people have very important fathers. Rich, powerful parents are the norm, as a matter of fact, at Crossroads. But Elon Musk was in a totally different weight class. And when the news broke that he was going to have a kid that went there, it made waves. It was a big deal. The president of our school herself gave Elon a private tour around the entire school. Elon Musk came to Crossroads. I have pictures of that. And I think the reason he chose to send Xavier there was because of our science building, which at the time was totally, and probably still is, state-of-the-art. We had just finished building it a couple of years ago. It cost $30 million to build, and it had incredible stuff in there. And so I think it was sold on the science building. Anyway, Xavier ended up going there. And you got to remember that before Crossroads, his education was the best in the world. It was the best education that ever existed on the planet because that's what Ad Astra was. Elon Musk's school he made for his own kids from middle school up until high school was called Ad Astra, and he hired basically only the best professors to teach there. These professors engaged with the kids, and when I say kids, I mean literal kids, like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, on only the highest level and pedigree of intellectual rigor. Elon Musk brought in professional mathematicians to teach algebra to the 30 or so kids that were there. Every year, the kids, and the average age was probably about 10 years old, would do a presentation at Caltech on a topic they had researched for a matter of months and put together a presentation that was better than what you would see at 99.9% of colleges. Because of family connections, I'd been to a few of those. And it was something to see. But what I'm saying is, in that environment, it was so prestigious, so impressive, so based on the ideas and education, that there was no room for ideological indoctrination. And as a matter of fact, the professors were completely removed from that. It was all about first principle-based analysis, which is what Elon Musk instilled in that school, because that's the way he thinks, is first principled analysis. It's a very physics-based approach to reality, and it's a very coherent way of thinking. Elon Musk's identity was ingrained at Astra. And everyone knew that the reason it was so prestigious was because of Elon Musk. Now, I can't really imagine what it must be like to be the son of a man like Elon Musk, because no matter what you do, you're going to be in his shadow, right? There's basically nothing in the world you can do to be, right, like most sons want to be more impressive than their fathers. How do you even do that? How do you even approach doing that if you're Elon Musk's kid, especially his son? So when he got to Crossroads, and keep in mind, there have been like waves being made because Elon Musk is such a big deal and he's sending his kid there. Just like Elon Musk was such a big deal in the education environment that he just came from. But now the grade was a lot bigger. The grade was 150 people instead of just 5. And what was the number one thing that people, including myself, wanted to ask Xavier about? It was his dad. What is it like having Elon Musk as a father? Xavier did not have a sense of identity for himself. In a formative age when you're formulating your identity. And I'm guessing that every conversation he had started with, what is it like having Elon Musk as your father? I'm sure that gets old, and I don't blame him for being upset with that. But that sets the stage. Because at Crossroads, there is and was an ideology that was so far leftist and so pervasive, it defined the culture. And that was the postmodern neo-Marxist left, which says to people, you can be a good person just by saying you care about the environment. You can be a hero just as a result of being a part of the right club. You can be a virtuous hero on the right side of history at 15 years old just by repeating the right lines. This is obviously in complete congruence with the identitarian left that we see playing out and manifesting itself currently in our culture. And so, what did Xavier do when he didn't have an identity? When every question was, what is it like having Elon Musk as your dad? When he was already a theater kid, basically, outgoing, not afraid of his emotional limits, very extroverted, tenacious, ahead of everyone else. He took that deal from Marxism. He took that deal from the left that said, you can be a good person, you can have an identity, you can be a hero. All you have to do is sacrifice your individual identity and exchange it for a group identity membership with the left, with our cult of extremism. You have to repeat our lines, you have to agree with us, but in return, you'll be a good person. You'll be a part of our club of counterfeit virtue, and this will make you better than anyone else. He took that deal. Of course he did. And they ran with it. They poured gasoline on it, with all of the resentment of Marxism and the inverted intersectionalist hierarchies that dole out demonization or virtue. And so yes, of course they said billionaires were bad. Was that an accident? No. If billionaires are bad, and your dad's literally the biggest billionaire, what does that make your dad? Oh, wait a second, and the reason you're a part of our club is because people were asking you what is it like having Elon as a dad? He must really be bad now, right? Oh yeah, of course he is. Hey, you want to grow out your hair? You're already a theater kid, and there's no real difference between men and women, which, by the way, was propagated at Crossroads. There's no real difference between men and women. They're psychologically and physically the same, obviously, and any idea to the contrary is simply oppression. Yeah, sure, I'll grow out my hair. That's probably what happened. What about puberty blockers? You really want to resist that same predatory, masculine, overbearing force in your mind that you're still running from, that you consider your father? Remember, you don't have to worry about actual competence anymore like you did at Ad Astra, because markers of meritocracy are oppression anyway. No, you'll be a good person just as a result of being a part of our club. Would you like to ascend the ranks of victimhood? Vivian took that opportunity, just the way many other leftists who are young and have had their brains basically shaped by the ideology into being the equivalent of cognitively just impaired have done. It preys on the juvenile mind, which is not fortified against incomplete, incoherent presuppositions. And so the need to be a victim, the demonization of billionaires, the rejection of competence, order, meritocracy, all of which his father literally embodied, turned him against his father. Once he was turned against his father, there was nothing left in his mind archetypally to prevent him from becoming what we see now, which is sadly a shell of even who he was when he was 14. But to the left, that's okay, because competence is actually an enemy. They don't need competence. They need adherence. As a matter of fact, competence is a threat, because when you're competent, you can ask questions. You can say, why is this the case? Is this really true? Why are we insisting that the only thing that mediates relationships between people is power? Why are we saying that there's only such thing as victimhood and that to be a victim by default makes you a good person? When you're competent, you can ask questions like that, like I did, and then you discover Jordan Peterson. It's far more convenient to take away someone's cognitive ability, even when they've had the most elite education experience the world has ever seen. And so that, guys, is sadly what happened to Vivian Musk. There are other details I could tell you about Crossroads, what it was like, some of the other results of Elon Musk sending his kid there. Some interesting things happened. If you guys are interested in more details, feel free to ask me questions in the comments and I'll respond to them. No one else will be able to give you these answers, and if you'd like to know anything else, let me know. Be sure to like the video and subscribe. This video was important to make, and I've wanted to make it for a while. See you guys in the next one.